Welcome to Cats and Rats Podcast, covering your Florida Panthers.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cats and Rats Podcast, episode 5 here. We've got a special guest here today. We're going to get to him in just a short second or two here, but I'm going to start with my co-host here first. First off, Cody, I'm going to start with you, episode 5 here. What does number 5 bring to your memory here?
Oh, my favorite Panther player of all time, Aaron Ekblad, baby.
I was thinking of that today. I thought you were going to say Eki.
Who we're missing very dearly right now.
Yeah, that's a reason I was thinking about him today on episode 5 here. We haven't gone through all the different numbers. Shout out to Luongo for episode 1. You guys can probably pick some people for episode 3 and 4.
Ballard too.
Keith Ballard too. Okay. 3 and 4. Maybe we'll get our special guest here to throw out some names there, and Nick here in a second. But yeah, I was thinking of your boy Eki here today, Cody, because just short here, he's been a big topic of conversation, which we're going to get into our first segment here shortly.
Yeah, I mean, his absence has been severely missed throughout these last couple of games, but we'll get more into depth to that later. But all I have to say is, funny not seeing any more trade proposals with him in it anymore, huh?
Last year there was second round picks, third round picks. That's what was being thrown around for Ekblad. And then me and you were just kind of rolling our eyes and be like, what, we're going to give away our franchise cornerstone defenseman, whether you believe he's that now or not, for second, third round picks and a win now window, but whatever. But that's what we get on the Spaces post game calls, at least last year.
Love the Spaces community.
Love y'all. Yeah.
Bring the fire every night.
Hey, we brought some fire last Saturday there. Shout out to my co-hosts Vince and Lex for that one, as you and Nick were a little busy there taking care of some matters, but I'm going to be busy ahead this week, which we'll talk about at the end here. So you guys are going to have to kind of cover for me, but let's go to my other co-host here, Nick. How's it going, Nick?
I'm good. How are you, Kirby?
Not bad. What do you have to throw our way here off the top?
No, obviously the little break here for the Panthers coming around the right time. We'll obviously get to that a little bit later, but overall pretty good. Have to be happy with where we're sitting at right now.
Yeah, I think we'll all have kind of like different opinions there as we lead off our first segment here in just a second with our meter of concern where the Panthers are at right now. But I'd like to welcome our special guest here on episode number 5 here, host of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. If you guys haven't checked him out, make sure you're following on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. I like to watch on YouTube because he'll bring guests on and you kind of get to see a sense and a feel of just watching kind of like their reactions. Armando, he's got some fun reactions after, wins or loss, whatever it may be. So, yeah, my guest here today is Armando Velez, host of the Locked On Panthers Network, and also now writing for the Hockey News. How's it going, Armando?
Kirby, Cody, Nick, thank you guys so much for having me on. Always a pleasure to jump on, talk some Florida Panthers hockey. And grateful that you and I, Kirby, have maintained this friendship throughout. Now it's going to be like just about 3 years now. Crazy how much time has flown, how much time flies.
Yeah, even before I kind of started the communities and became a content creator, I first came on Armando's show as a fan series a few summers ago. And then after the big Matthew Tkachuk blockbuster deal, and then you've had me on every summer throughout there, and then also sometimes throughout the season. So I was like, return the favor to you there last spring. But I said with this new startup of the Cats and Rats Podcast Network with 5 Reasons here, I was like, got to get Armando on here, So, and I know you're good friends with Alex and obviously David Dwork, who we're going to have on down the road here as well, that you work alongside. So it's going to be fun to have you on here today. It's kind of a interesting point right now in the Panthers season, a kind of a mini bye week here. I kind of want you guys to give me and we'll start with Armando here. I want you guys to kind of give me, but just roundtable, jump in whenever you have something to say, kind of your impressions of the last 5 games, but even the last 3 in particular, the Dallas comeback win, the Carolina loss, and the Tampa Bay loss where the Panthers almost pulled the comeback like they did in that game at Dallas. So kind of like your evaluation of these last few games with the new additions of Tarasenko that we addressed on the last podcast with Alex Baumgartner. And then also Kyle Oposo, part of the lineup now. Some different things going on with the defense, the deep pairing, so to speak. But kind of like, what's your evaluation of this team right now, Armando? And kind of like your level of concern where the Panthers are at here moving forward?
I would say my concern level right now is that kind of a 4 out of 10 with if one were to be the worst, the least concern, excuse me,
Yep.
with 10 being the house is burning for that.
Mhm.
And you think about, it's crazy because when you think about with these 5 games specifically, I mean, the first one was the very first game that Tarasenko was in the lineup for the Florida Panthers, and you're thinking the Philadelphia Flyers, okay, a team that's still in rebuild mode, even though they've overachieved for what they've had on their roster, they're still currently in the 3rd spot in the Metropolitan Division. But it's crazy because the stretch that the Florida Panthers would come off of when you're thinking the back to back in New York and New Jersey, and then the first one, even after that, it's coming right off the All-Star break where Samuel Ersson, he loves to play the Florida Panthers and all. And then, it's crazy because I'm sure people in your area, Kirby, have spoken all about that first game after the trade deadline against the Calgary Flames, where 3 out of the 5 goals were turnovers from Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau and all.
Yeah.
And then you think about specifically the 2 out of the last 3 games. It's unlike the Panthers. It's you've seen a lot of odd man rushes, especially a big one that Sergei Bobrovsky had after he gave up the first goal against after that 2-0, and then in this most recent one where, I mean, I know Montour's your boy, Kirby, but not the best game out of Brandon Montour on Saturday night for him. But I mean, but you also saw in the Carolina game how I remember just after the first period on the Valley broadcast, 0 odd man rushes against after period 1, and even Paul Maurice after the Carolina game, and excuse me, the Dallas game and now the Tampa Bay game, he's spoken multiple times on how much he's liked their finish. The difference is in the Dallas game, it was the final 20 minutes versus in the Tampa Bay game, it was the final 40. So you've seen strong finishes that have, and unfortunately after the Dallas game, they put all their energy in that it really affected them in the next game. And thankfully with this one after the Tampa Bay game, it's 4 days off, and based on the beat reporters who were there today, the practice was super intense, and I like that it's this intense right now with the 4 days off, because you're keeping up with the game speed, or at least trying to. I know you can't replicate it in practice 100%, but it's using this to your advantage as well when you do have this break. So it's their first 2-game losing streak in regulation since mid-December, so it's unfamiliar territory from the last 3 months. So it's a little different now as far as what the Panthers have gone through as far as getting to this point.
Yeah, Armando, a good point by you there, because some of our fans on the post-game Twitter X Spaces were calling for a bag skate. I'm like, I'm not there yet. But, that intensity of practice with these days off here, the reports around that the flu bug's going around the room and some guys are sick and things like that. So kind of get the guys out there that are healthy and give some rest to the other guys that might need it at this point. But Cody and Nick, what is your level of concern? I'm around where Armando is at 4. I'm probably maybe a little higher, 5.5, 6, because of the defense, which we'll get into a little bit throughout this segment and throughout this episode. That has been concerning for me over the past month or two before the Ekblad injury, and what would happen if we faced an injury or an illness, or for whatever reason that we had to jumble up these different pairings. And I think that's been a bit of our problem. And Bob, he's been great all year, but there's been a little bit of a stretch here right now where you're like, okay, maybe he could have made a save here or there. But again, you need that help from in front of you. And that's my concern. I think the forward chemistry can kind of work itself out. But Cody and Nick, what is your level of concern? Because I know you guys weren't with me for that long a time on Saturday. Cody, you were telling everyone to kind of be patient and preach patience. And I think Nick's kind of with you as well there.
Yeah, it's just I'm not they needed this losing streak, because once again, prior to the last 21 games before that game, they were 18-3 in their past 21 games. And this may seem like a little bit of a hot take, but I'm not really a fan of stretches like that, because you're kind of more focused on winning more or less than the process in certain cases. But why I'm not concerned is it's just I have trust that they'll work itself out. Where I think the D in past couple games, I think they just been way too aggressive on the pinch, which is why they're kind of getting caught. But
Yep.
that's a part of the system, so I can't really like.
And a lot of that's happening early in games too, Cody.
Yeah. Or
Where
I
they
think
do start to figure it out, but it has been coming back to bite us in the butt, to start
yeah,
games
because
where
I
we're
think
behind the 8 ball.
yeah, because I think the past 7 out of the last 8 games we haven't scored in the first period. So like that's
Mhm.
probably the most alarming thing to me is like we need to get like we've been off to a lot of slow starts of recent weeks.
You even go
But
back to that Detroit game. That actually was ultimately a really strong game for us. We didn't score there till the halfway mark of the game where it was 0-0,
yeah,
I
but
believe.
but the first period wasn't like oh we didn't score because they were bad. I just thought Line made some good saves in that first period. They were fine in the first. If it's
Mhm.
0-0 because of that, then that's perfectly fine. You get chances, but you're not really allowing much, especially on the road.
Yeah, it's the breakdown and the bad pinches, and if you're doing that at home
I
and things like that. And we're starting to get some penalties now that,
yeah,
stick infractions coming back in our game.
I just believe
And
they know they need to get off to better starts, and I think that's why they're starting off more aggressively. And then once the first intermission, second intermission hits, they're like, okay, let's tone it down on that point, and then they get better as the game goes about. But
So what's your level of, before we go to Nick here, what's your level of concern number then? I'm about a 5.5.
I'm about a
Armando's around
2.
4. 2. Yeah, you're pretty even keel on this.
Yeah,
I'm
but
worried about the defense because sometimes I know Cody gets on, the forwards or gets on the goaltender. Right now, I think it's squarely on the D, and I don't really see. You guys can agree to disagree with me, Nick. I don't really see one
but
defenseman out there playing sterling hockey right now,
yeah,
especially with the new first pairing, the new third pairing, and the second pairing of Monter and Mikla. I feel that's been our best pairing, but the other night, like Armando said, they kind of had an off night and weren't
they
great either. So
they
again,
kind of an off night. They got destroyed in transition. Like that's where they got killed. Because
in the first period, but we only gave
yeah,
up 7 shots from the second, third. So I could say the first period, but the second, third, we were spending a lot of time in their own end.
yeah,
And
but
again, that's Mikkel and Monter creating the offense too.
yeah, but also the same token, I thought the Tampa game was our best out of like the last 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like excluding Calgary because they played good against Calgary. Because I'm gonna be real, Calgary's not really that great of a team. But I like the Tampa effort because in the first, it did. I didn't think we were playing that bad in the first. I just felt like the Lightning had 2 chances and they buried them both. But I'm gonna compare this skid to like another team, but shall I? So we all can agree here the Colorado Avalanche are Stanley Cup contenders, correct? At least in the
Yeah.
absolutely.
top 4, top
Despite
3.
despite their questionable goaltending, but yes, they
All
are a
right.
contender.
But
So
Cody, you and our co-host Lex, you guys were both down on Colorado this year. And I
I'm not
said,
down.
wait till they get healthy.
I'm not down in
Well,
Colorado. I'm down in Vancouver.
okay. Well, you were
That's
down in Colorado before Vancouver because of their defense and how they looked in their own zone.
yeah,
I
but
remember that.
yeah, but now that they kind of upgraded, like with the Sean Walker deal, they've
Mhm.
really revamped their bottom 6, where I think that was their biggest issue. Because besides the McKinnon Rantanen line, they really had nothing. 5-on-5, especially. We saw in the games that we played against them. Like McKinnon and Rantanen and McCarr did all the damage.
Yeah,
But
but
once they
Nikushkin's a big player. I'm a big proponent of him. He's a huge piece of that puzzle. And then if they do eventually get back Landeskog, that's like adding a guy at the deadline
I'm
for
not sure
free.
about Landeskog because he hasn't played in 2 years. So may need a lot of time. But
I'll bet on.
in February, right after the All-Star break, Colorado played, let's see, 6 games here. They lost it in overtime against the Rangers, lost in regulation to the Devils, lost 5-2 Carolina, lost 4-0 to us, beat Washington 6-3, and then lost 6-3 to Tampa. That's 1-5-1 in that stretch. And that's like kind of like where I feel like the Panthers are at, not as extreme, but like with the way they have played, that's where I feel they're at. Like they could have easily have lost a couple of those games that they have.
So, yeah. I just want to say here, kind of some of our viewer feedback here. Vincent, who's one of our co-hosts on Spaces, he's kind of in between me and Cody there, Nick. 3.5 out of 10. He's hoping it's just a small blip and that we're not falling off the wagon. I think we'll get back on track and tune up in time for the playoffs just to start. But the next few games will tell us a lot about what we are going forward. So, Nick, kind of where are you at with all of this?
I'm very aligned with Vince on that sentiment. I'm at around a 3 in terms of level of concern. Paul Maurice said in the post-game press conference, I'm not quoting him exactly here, but basically what he said is they got in the second half of that game, they got back to the game that they had been missing since the New York game. He alluded to something like that. And I really agreed with him on that point. And I pointed this out, this not great play against Montreal and on Spaces. I said I didn't like, and it wasn't just the fact that we got the 2 points or, oh, we barely beat Montreal. Montreal played a good game that game, but I didn't like the effort in the games leading up to it, that Ottawa, Washington, Montreal stretch. Then we go out and I think we beat the Rangers. That was a very good game. But then New Jersey game, we didn't play very well. And then this last 5-game stretch after the trade deadline, I still don't think, like, Calgary outplayed us in that first period. And then we got a couple of chances. We buried them and then kind of left them in the dust, kind of. But these past 5 games with the addition of Tarasenko and Opozo, I'm not going to lie, it has been a rough transition. A little bit, hasn't been seamless, right? But overall, my level of concern is not that high because, number one, I trust the coaching staff to make the needed adjustments, right? As Armando mentioned today, and many others on Twitter, beat reporters, that the intensity was high at practice today. And you also have to take into account the injuries, right? Like, I don't think you can understate the importance of Aaron Ekblad to this team. And whether you think he's a great defenseman or not, I think he's a very good defenseman. He's a right shot defenseman who puts everybody where they need to be, who plays 20, 22 minutes a night. And that is huge right now. Whereas Josh Mahura, as I mentioned in the past, Kirby, he's playing 10, 11, 12 minutes a night. I also think that, Carolina and Dallas both played really good games against us. And Tampa in that first period, where I don't think we played awful, but Tampa in that first period, they obviously had the quick transition speed. And I noticed that's kind of where a lot of our struggles were in this little blip we've had here. Like in terms of perimeter speed, like the forwards coming through the neutral zone and our defensemen trying to defend it. They're coming around the outside and being on the outside. I think Mahura took a penalty like that against Carolina where he was beat to the outside and he got a hooking call.
I just want to jump in here quick, Cody, and I want to go back to Armando here. From Tom, formerly of the UK, now living in Florida. He said zero concern, just as Cody discussed on Spaces. There was a lot of shout outs to Cody on there. Brooke mentioned also with the flu ripping around the team. I wanted to read this one, guys. Decker, my concern is zero zilch. The first 2-game losing streak since December while missing your number 1 defenseman is not a time to freak out. We outshot Tampa by 35 plus. We got goalied by the GOAT goalie in Vasi. Everyone take a Xanax. And we right the ship against the Preds on Thursday.
Yep. And just to add real quick, and piggyback off Nick real quick, but we kind of learned like the 9-2 Tampa game. I think we could all agree the Panthers got every bounce in that game. Like stuff going off Tampa defenders, puck ending up on their sticks. Like that game was, I just felt like I didn't think we played dominantly, but I just felt like we just had a lot of puck luck. And with the game we just played against Tampa was the complete opposite. We hit every post. Vasilevsky made every save. It was just something I don't think a lot of teams can overcome. You can't overcome bad luck. And I'll always say that statement. It's you need luck to win. But
and Cody,
go ahead, Armando.
And Cody, I'm just looking at the schedule again, and after that 9-2 victory over Tampa, that's kind of when the Florida Panthers were starting to play poorly, but still finding ways to win, against Ottawa and Montreal specifically.
They got away with a couple.
Getting away with a couple, and then they look the one loss that they have in that stretch after that is the one in Carolina where Aho scores with 20 seconds left. So it's crazy how
that was our best game. That was our best game right there.
That was you're talking about the first Carolina game, right?
Yes, the first Carolina game where they lose 2 skaters.
Yeah, so and those are again, that's
I love that
top pairing. It's your top pairing defenseman and your one of your best forwards. I mean, those aren't insignificant losses, right? And I think what this team has done a really good job of this year. There's a couple times this year, you remember the Vegas game where Erod and Barkov left the game early. They go and play great in that game. Then you see Kachuk and Forsling go out in the Carolina game. They play great there. We know this team is good. We know it's a well-coached team. They're a little undisciplined at times, sure. But it's a well-coached team. It's a team that has made adjustments in the past. Like, I think it's important for the fans to trust the coaching staff here. And I think it's important to remember when everybody was kind of complaining about the power play, right? Jamie Compton, our assistant coach, and it might be Tuomo Ruutu, I think, who also runs the power play. I'm not 1,000% sure who runs the power play, but I know Maurice gave Compton credit last year in the playoffs for making an adjustment in the Boston series. So you take a look at our power play. At the beginning of last season, power play started off rough, and I think down the final stretch, it was like top 8 to 10 in the league. This year started off rough. It's second or third in the NHL, and then in the playoffs last year, it made an adjustment in the Boston series where that was kind of the difference maker in the Tampa series and the Washington series the year before. Is that this coaching staff has proven that they can make adjustments, the needed adjustments, and they're going to have their team prepared. And I trust Maurice with this 4 days off, not only to ramp up the intensity, but to make the needed adjustments and to get back on track. It's about building the basics, the fundamentals, building the right game. It's not about results, in my opinion.
You're gonna get people upset with that. You guys have said that twice now with the results versus the process. People get upset at us.
Right now, for the rest of this regular season, right? And it's even important in the playoffs. Right now, the 2 points to me, although are very important, are almost secondary to me. I'd rather play the strong game the right way and maybe lose an extra game or two. But if you play the right way in that strong game, the 2 points are going to come naturally. So I think first is building the right habits, fine-tuning your game. The second part of that is the 2 points at this point in the season. I know everybody's looking at where we're going to finish in the Eastern Conference, right? Just focus on our game. That's all we can control right now.
I just want to jump back in, Cody. People that are around Cody's level or even less, Jimmy Nguyen, Braden, and Shawnee Mack all say 0 out of 10. Jimmy says 0 out of 10. The Peas are strategically playing themselves out of the President's Trophy, along with missing some key guys. So
I want this to be on record. There is no such thing as a President's Trophy curse.
Thank you.
The highest percentage of teams that have won the Stanley Cup were President's Trophy winners. Listen, who was the last team to win a President's Trophy? It was the Hawks. Which year? 13?
2013. That was the 48-game season.
Listen, I'll take this to my grave. A curse is 20 years plus. That's a curse. There's no such thing as a President's Trophy curse. I hate it because, what happened to us in our President's Trophy year? We played bad.
And our fan base, Armando, they just internalize it. At least our part of our community. I don't know if you could speak for your side, but they internalize everything that happens to us. Cody and I, after post games, will say, well, this has happened to Tampa. This has happened to Vancouver. This has happened to Colorado. And they always come back and say, I don't care what happens with those teams. I care what happens with our team. But then you're not looking at the full picture and the full scope, which we try to do that a lot, Armando, with our community because we talk Panthers and then we go around the league, always in that second hour. We try to use examples and things like that. Some of the fans, they don't want to hear it. Sometimes it's in the moment, Armando, because their emotions are at all-time high. But we try to explain this to them. So I don't know, Armando, what you could say on that behalf, because I know you get the DMs, you get the messages.
The difference between you and I is you're doing it live all the time after. You're getting the raw reaction versus mine is usually posted around 3 hours after the fact, something along those lines, or sometimes even the next morning. So a lot of times for that, a lot of cooler heads can prevail in that. So when it comes to reactions and all, people can, when you go to sleep, you get your 8 hours, you tend to not be as reactive when it comes to this. I can speak for myself. But for the President's Trophy, I mean, yeah, I get it. Vancouver in 2010, 2011, they didn't win it all. Washington Capitals, the year that they finally got over the hump against the Pittsburgh Penguins, they didn't win the President's Trophy that year that they won the cup. And obviously people will point to the Tampa Bay Lightning getting swept by Columbus back in 2019. But I also just think about what's happened since 1967, and great research project that Jacob Langsam of Panther Puri did as far as looking up the winners. I mean, the President's Trophy was first distributed in 1985, so the New York Islanders in the early 80s did not get to benefit off of their dynasty years. But I mean, but even from 67, 19 Stanley Cup winners have been the number one overall team, and the second highest, the second most is not even half of that number, neither. So I now, after looking it up as far as the history of the game, even before the President's Trophy was distributed, I said it, I'm gonna say it one more time on this show. There's gonna be 3 reasons why the Panthers don't win the cup. Number 1, they don't play well. Number 2, injuries, and number 3, and I say this jokingly, not because of a regular season title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to add, there's 16 teams in the playoffs, right? If that one team doesn't win it, it's the President's Trophy curse. I mean, like, the more than likely, like, that one team wins it, more than likely, most times you're not going to win the cup. And like Armando just said, historically, that's the best chance you have to win the cup. But again, just because that one team out of 16 doesn't win the cup, it's labeled as a President's Trophy curse. I find kind of ridiculous, to be completely honest.
I want to touch on what Armando said there. If the Panthers don't end up reaching their ultimate goal this spring and winning the Stanley Cup, I've got something to add in our next segment there, gentlemen. But before we get to our next segment, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, CanesWear. Panthers Fever is here. Are you geared up? CanesWear and Davie is the place for all your Florida Panthers needs. They have the largest gear for your favorite NHL team. Jerseys, polos, t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. CanesWear has you covered. Stop by their store in Davie or at pantherswear.com. Again, that's pantherswear, WEAR.com for all your Panthers gear. So I just wanted to give a little bit more fan feedback that we got here on our Twitter X platform today as we move on to our next segment here. Popper Selly says, my concern is the defensive depth. Why didn't Zito trust in some more pickups on the defensive end at the deadline? Feels like we're in the same situation as last postseason. There are going to be injuries to leave the postseason in the hands of Blinkus, Bjornfot, and Mahura. I don't know. And that's one that I've agreed with, gentlemen. With our defensive depth, we've got one other here from David as well. David D, I believe it is. I'm trying to find his here. He's got a few different evaluations of a couple different predictions. I couldn't read it all there, David. I'm trying to pull yours up here, and I don't have it here in front of me. And I'm going to go to Jorge's next. Jorge says Ekblad doesn't get enough credit. Cody, you'll love that. Not upgrading Kulikov for a proper right-handed defenseman was dumb. So that was from Jorge there. And trying to find David's here, as I did have it in front of me. David Davies. He's one of our main listeners, guys. I don't think he's spoken in our Spaces chat too often there. I can't find David's there. Apologize, David. But again, David was saying about the defense depth being a concern as well. So that's kind of where I've kind of laid on that factor. We're going to get into that here in our next segment as we're going to talk about one of our top end defensemen as Gustav Forsling signed an extension this past week. 8 years, $46 million, which is going to take him to his age 34, 35 birth year there. So again, birthday. So Armando, you used this term on your Locked On podcast episode that I listened to, you and Nick Fairbanks. We call him Banksy in our community. He comes by our spaces quite often. Use the word head scratcher, and that's the same one that I would use when it comes to the term, because this is a guy in Gustav Forsling who I saw 3-4 years ago, kind of being an all right defenseman, kind of a depth guy that fit very well with Ratko Gudas from last season to really, I'm going to say this, guys, and I know some of you might agree or disagree, and some of our listeners out there, a reason why we were where we were in the standings was because of our first pairing of Ekblad and Forsling. They were not good all year. And that is concerning to me because I did not see a big turnaround from last year's regular season into the playoffs. They were a little bit better in the playoffs, but this season you've seen Gustav Forsling take off, and this is to me like his best season that we've seen, not only in a Panthers uniform but also in the NHL. But again, this is on a contract year that he's doing this, Aaron Ekblad, which we're seeing out of the lineup right now. Forsling looks a lot better when Aaron Ekblad's alongside him. That's a guy that's going to be a free agent here in another year. So to me, that part's a little concerning there, because who is our number one defenseman? We read some of these comments here tonight, and people are like, we're missing our number one defenseman. We're missing our number one defenseman. So Gustav Forsling isn't being paid like a number one defenseman with that term, which again, I said about 5.5, 5.75 in that range was the max that I'd be willing to pay him. Everyone couldn't believe that number. They said I was too low. It's going to be 6, Kirby. It's going to be 7. Well, the term brings that number down. But again, that's about what I would have signed him for. But again, the way that he's played this season, I understand that he's earned a little bit more than that if he did reach the open market. But I want to see, and I've talked to you about this, Armando, off the air in the summer, a guy like Gustav Forsling, a guy like Anton Lundell. I didn't want those guys signed until I saw what they did in the playoffs. It's interesting how Zito's going about this, Armando. He's signing guys like Gadovich. He's signing guys like Luosterainen in the summer. He's now signing Forsling, who has elevated his play, but he's still got some big guys out there that he hasn't signed, namely Sam Reinhart. So it's interesting what he's doing right now by extending these players. I know Cody and Nick, we talked about our spaces, and Nick Fairbanks actually mentioned this too, Armando, with Noah Hannafin off the market. He was a guy that was very similar in a mold of Gustav Forsling, the way that he plays, left-handed defenseman, what he was going to be paid, probably more than even Gustav Forsling on the open market. So again, I know you've talked about this with your audience, Armando, but this is the first time we've kind of brought this up. What are your thoughts on this extension of Gustav Forsling?
I thought it was going to be 5 years at max. I was surprised when I first heard 8 years as far as the term there, and that's the head scratching part, like I said once again. But in the last 2 years, it's a modified no trade clause. So, and it's a few years after, and the thing is, when that does become a modified no trade clause, that's when Barkov's and Kachuk's contracts expire. So kind of interesting to see what that offseason will bring for the Panthers. But that's 6 years from now.
Do you think Zito was thinking that defensemen and those contracts expiring when he signed that, or that didn't really play?
I think so. I think that it's like what's going to happen when the window closes. And I'm not saying that the window is going to be 8 years. There might be some retooling years along the way, but it's if you have that opportunity to go full reset there too. I mean, the Panthers have an opportunity even to retool this offseason with where Bobrovsky and Ekblad's clauses are now, but none of them have proven that none of those two have shown you that they should be traded right now, at least. But that's a just in case for the Panthers as far as the clauses there. So as far as that, I think that's really smart GMing by Bill Zito in case he needs to go in a change of direction when it comes to Forsling's contract. But as far as that, contract year for Gustav Forsling. I mean, and then you talk about the different depth signings with Luosterainen, Gadovich. Let's not forget Uvis Belinskis. He's going to be part of the mix coming up next season too for him. And there's one extension I really want to see. I do want to see, and I said this before, I do want to see Kevin Stenlund at least get a 1-year extension. I think he's really valuable to the team as far as that, because we've seen midseason extensions of Ryan Lomberg. We saw a midseason extension of Josh Mahura last year.
Fans thought Ratko Gudas one was coming, but I was like, don't count that one, but fans thought maybe. But then Gudas had some injuries there too that kind of muddied the waters, but also what he was going to get on the open market.
Yeah, no way the Panthers were going to pay that. So I think it's a really smart contract. And here's the thing. Depending on where Ekblad's next contract will be, whether or not it's with Florida, you are kind of possibly putting Gustav Forsling in a position where he could be your not only your top pair defenseman for many years to come. He could be your power play quarterback on the man advantage for the Panthers eventually.
Yeah, I heard you say that, and I was kind of like, oh, this is interesting because I know we kind of differ on that viewpoint. But I mentioned, hey, if Brandon Montour's not back next year, we probably run 5 forwards. So that's what I put out there this week after seeing this extension with Gustav Forsling. You never know. But I'm not super high on Gustav Forsling, and Cody doesn't like this, or Aaron Ekblad running our power play one. If Brandon Montour's not here more, because I asked our audience after the Tampa Bay game, who's going to run our power play next year if we're bringing someone in? And they're like, well, I don't think we're going to bring anyone in. And I said, therein lies the problem, because I think it has to become internal. And then we'll see. Again, you could say what you want about the 5 guys on this power play, but they're number 2 right now in the NHL. And that's going to be hard to live up to next year. Nick, where do you kind of fall in all of this?
I agree with your sentiment on Forsling. Again, I'm not somebody who completely dislikes Gustav Forsling. I think he's a really good, solid defenseman. I think there has been certain situations where he's been a little bit propped up more than of a better player than he really is. I'm not saying he's not a phenomenal player, but heard some, Norris Trophy into
And you've pulled up some numbers on that.
I pulled up some numbers. This guy doesn't even lead his team in ice time, and he's fifth. I think he's not even in the top 50 in terms of ice time, average ice time per game. And I looked at the previous Norris Trophy winners. All of them were top 20 in average ice time per game amongst defensemen. So I think the contract itself, the AAV, I don't mind at all. I think it's fair value right now, and as time goes on, it's going to age really well. So I think it's fair value for right now, and it's going to age as time goes on. So I really like the contract there. As far as any other contracts go, like Kirby, like you said, with Lomberg or Armando, like Lomberg, Mahura, now Gadjevich here, it's interesting to see these. I know depth pieces are important, but you have Sam Reinhart, coming off his second straight 30-goal season in the offseason, saying, I want to get a deal done and Kirby, I know you say this a lot. You've mentioned this time frame a lot, that Marlins game where he threw out the first pitch, how he should have been signed then. This is a guy you could have gotten for $7.5 million in the offseason. You're not near that number right now. It starts with an 8.
And the trade deadline has now passed, and I always use that as a marker when you get deals done, and that's when they got Forsling and Gadjevich wrapped up on the.
This is just pure speculation. I don't know anything. Noah Hannafin gets traded around 7:00 one night, and then the following morning, Gustav Forsling has a contract extension. And I know we were in on
Hannafin.
So I don't know if that is connected in any way. But it's just interesting, the timing on that. Hannafin gets traded, and then less than 24 hours later, Gustav Forsling has an 8-year contract extension. So overall, I think it's a solid deal. I like the deal for Forsling. The 8 years, again, isn't it buyout proof? I believe it's very bonus heavy.
Yeah, his base salary is $1 million, and in parts of the deal, I'm looking that up as we speak.
And the modified no trade clause, like Armando said, it's the last 2 years there. So
exactly,
I look at it as a 6-year deal.
I look at it as a 6-year, $5.75 million deal. And,
with the win now window, like Armando mentioned.
And you think about what 5.75 is going to be in 2-3 years from now. Well, Forsling will probably be, it's going to be a good
When
contract.
I said that 5.5 number, Nick, people are losing their mind at me that I'm not a Gustav Forsling fan and all this, but you got to look at the market value, and in a contract year, he can't go off of a lot of basis of what he's done in the past. Now, when you get into Aaron Ekblad, he could come back with big money and big term, and then Zito could be like, I'm not either signing that for that money or for that term. And why would a guy like Aaron Ekblad say, I'm going to sign for 7.5 by 3 years? That's just going to cut him off at the knees when he's had injury history, and that's not going to help him on his next deal.
And I agree with what you said on Forsling last year. He was not good last year by any stretch. I mean, was he completely terrible? No, but he was not very good. And he was playing above 23 minutes of ice time last year, and he struggled.
We didn't have a first pairing last year.
We didn't have really a first.
We had Brandon Montour playing on the second pairing with Mark Stahl.
And Gustav Forsling again here, Kirby. He was playing 23 minutes a night last year. The team wasn't very good. He struggled. The team struggled. This year, the ice time's down to around 21:50. So I think, again, I talked about minute allocation in the summer and how Vegas utilized that in the Stanley Cup final. And I think that's an important piece. Again, we're not
Yep.
doing exactly how Vegas did it, but we're definitely doing a more even minute allocation. And we've never seen Gustav Forsling. I mean, to my recollection, have we really, like, I know he was on the number 2 unit last year, but again, there are 3 defensemen on this roster, right, that are on the power play ahead of Gustav Forsling. So that means right now Gustav Forsling is the number 4 option on the power play.
An older
I do
OEL
think-
who's probably not
and
going to
I-
be brought back, Armando, and then jump in after Cody. Go ahead, Armando.
Yeah, OEL, I think it's just because of the experience. I mean, we all know that he's a stopgap when it comes to this year. And
I try to tell people that, Armando, but
Yeah.
they don't want to hear it.
Really?
I've
I'm-
heard
They
people-
want him signed for 3 years at 3.
And Armando,
3 million.
I've been saying this for months. This guy's probably going to get a 3x3 in the offseason with maybe second pair minutes, like a 4-5 defenseman role.
But a lot of our
So-
fans want to give him that deal, Armando, and it's like,
and here's
where's
the
the
thing.
Reinhardt money? Where's the Montour
I've
money?
heard-
Where's the
I've-
money for free agents? It's not going
I've
to be
heard
there.
people say, "Oh, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, you just sign him and let Montour go, and
No.
he puts up in Montour's spot and takes over the power play." Oliver Ekman-Larsson is a left-handed defenseman. He's not a right shot defenseman.
34 years old. this
Brandon
summer.
Montour is a right shot. So I know a lot of people are just throwing out names. Oh, he could replace. Like, you guys realize all these people are throwing out are left-handed defensemen. That matters to Maurice, I believe. I don't think Maurice wants to play put guys on their offside, although I don't think he does it as much of a huge deal. But again, Lucas Carlson didn't get in the lineup last year because he was a left-handed defenseman. Casey Fitzgerald got in over him because it was the right shot. So apparently, I don't know that for sure, but again, that's could be a potential reason. I think that
And Kulikov having to play his offside there
Kulikov
too.
having to play his offside, he's more of a veteran. He's done that in Anaheim. He's done that. I get it. Should have gotten a right shot defenseman. That's another point.
Mhm.
But overall, as far as Gustav Forsling goes, I really like the signing in terms of the money
Yeah,
because
it's
think
good for
fair money.
Forsling. It's fair money. It's good for Forsling, Cody. It's good for Zito. You can't really say anyone lost.
We're
out.
not going to get a better
Forsling gets-
defenseman for that price.
Yeah, Forsling gets the long-term security, and Zito, Armando, I was going to be critical of this potential deal with Forsling. He gets him locked out at a very good AAV. That's where I had him. 5.5, 5.75.
In my opinion, with a deal like this, the term really doesn't matter to me. The AAV does. Like if you had to give up the extra, let's say we were at 5 years.
6.75 with some fans.
If he
would
was
have
at
given him.
6.5, right? Like, let's see, like if he was like the 6.5 was the original number, like for 5 years, like okay, 8, well we'll give you 5.75. Like if we need the extra 3 years to get that number down, that's fine. I don't care. Like in a cup window, I don't like contracts like this. I don't think term matters. AAV matters. Like,
And thankfully, it's gonna be a $4 million raise next season, and assuming that we don't have another pandemic, it's gonna take less of a percentage of the cap. And I just looked up his base salary. It's gonna be $1 million every single year of that contract, and signing bonus will be 5.25 until the last 3 years. Then it goes to 4 million, and then 2 in the final 2. So it is buyout proof.
yeah.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure the Kachuk contract structured that way as well. But in like Gustav Forsling has elevated his play this year. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He's been in my opinion, he was our best defender he's our best defender when the rush went on the rush, in my opinion. He breaks up the most plays. The eye test kind of proves that. It's just my worry is like if I do have a worry, it's can he handle the bigger minutes? Like the 24, 25 minutes.
Where Uyghur was getting up to and kind of failing.
Yeah.
To be frank,
I don't see Forsling's not going to fail like Uyghur because I think Forsling's smarter with the puck. But
that's my big thing. I push back on the Uyghur and the analytics charts. I'm like, when he gets those elevated minutes from 21 to 23, 23 to 25, you saw fall off in his game, and it always happens at the end of games and critical moments. And I think Forsling, is a better skater, maybe better conditioned athlete. You could argue maybe Forsling's a better IQ hockey player than Uyghur. But that's something that we were depending on Uyghur on that first pairing, Cody, with Ekblad, and it just fell off a cliff. So I kind of worry that what is going to be with the Forsling Ekblad pairing, because we've seen mixed results over the last 2 years with those two guys, and they're probably going to run with that left hand like D, as Nick mentioned, right hand D. So again, what does it look like the playoffs? What's it going to look like next year?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah.
Mhm.
But in the same,
because all our other defensemen, they're playing with different partners. You know, they're playing with whoever's in the lineup. Montour, you're with Mark Stahl. This year, you're with Mikkola. I don't really see a fall off in his game depending on who his partner is. Those two guys are going to be linked together. What are they going to be moving forward? What are they going to be in the playoffs? Aaron Ekblad, Cody, coming off another injury, heading into the playoffs. Fans are not worried about it because where we are in the standings. But what is that pairing going to look like in the playoffs? They have to undoubtedly be our top pairing. Any series, I don't care if we're playing Boston, Toronto, Carolina, New York, Philly, they got to be our top pairing. No ands, ifs about it.
namely, they elevated their play, namely in the Carolina series. Like those two were very solid in that series. Heck, Forsling had a goal called back at that series too, and that's where they elevated.
But I think the defense in that series was washed out, and it was to our advantage because Carolina had a better defense on paper.
Yeah. But like once again, they did something last year we did see the entire year, which was they played a structured defensive game and they beat Carolina at their own game.
Their own game. And you had a guy like Barkov being the ultimate X factor and best player on the ice.
Yeah, even
which helps your defense, Armando.
Yeah, even before Slavin and even before Slavin went out with that injury in Game 4, like the first two games, it was him and Burns on the ice, giving up those game winners.
Yep, getting tied up behind the net there, Keystone Cops.
Yeah, and Forsling and Ekblad did a great job of just when they had the puck, they just got it out. They didn't take any chances. They just kept getting it out.
But Cody, this year, I think they got to be more difference makers. Offensively, defensively, big moments. You know, we're not going to get the season ever again that we got from Brandon Montour. So you need to have that kind of defensive pairing there coming through big, pretty much every series, maybe potentially, Cody. Maybe not all the big moments, but each series in, series out, they need to be the best.
You just need a D to make a play every series. Where I think, like,
but again, you're also forgetting about Bob, Cody. You can't expect that from Bob either. You know?
No, but I just think where if you just play that defensive game where you only need like 3 big stops a game, I think you'll be good. But now in these next couple games, Forsling's going to have a lot of heavy workload now, because now with that came out earlier today, Dmitry Kulikov suspended 2 games for elbow encounter Sherry. I expected a suspension. I mean, principal point of contact to the head. The NHL.
I said 2 games. Principal point contact to the head, coming back towards a defenseless guy. And whether people want to hear it or not, Kulikov has a suspension history. I know it dates back, 7+ years, 9 years, whatever it is. But again, they mentioned that in the call, Cody. So they said all 3 of those things.
Yeah, and
we talked about.
But now we're probably going to see. We're definitely probably going to see Bjornfoot, Tobias Bjornfoot, the guy that we got off waivers during the trade deadline day from Vegas, for them to make room for Noah Hannafin. We're probably going to see him in the lineup. With him and Josh Mahura as their bottom pair. So Forsling's probably going to get about 24, 25 minutes. Montour probably about a minute more or a minute less, depending on how many power plays we have in the game. But like
Nick and Armando, what do you think about these pairings moving forward here with the Kulikov suspension?
Go ahead, Armando.
First off, I want to go off the suspension because I won't be talking about it on my feed until Wednesday with Jacob Winans for Winans Wednesday. But I said it just like this because and the reason why I said it is because I'm an official myself. So intent does not matter as far as whether you mean to hit somebody in the head or not. Even though the Kulikov's elbow first hit his Shiri's shoulder and then his Kulikov's shoulder hit the head, Shiri did not have an opportunity to brace himself. That's the thing. Brace himself is the key when it comes to that hit. And it's unfortunate. I know this is a fast game too, but the history is also come into effect. Obviously, thankfully, it's not worse as far as the amount of games he's missed, because when he clipped Tyler Seguin back in 2015, that was a 4-game suspension for Kulikov. So the fact I'm thinking that the fact that it's been a gap of that long, thankfully, they are seeing it as he hasn't had anything recent since. So I think 2 games is fair.
Yeah, that was right on my number there, Nick. 1 to 2 games. Nick, what do you have to say on the Kulikov suspension?
Well, I was at the game. I didn't see it in real time, and looking at it, I know there's some arguments made about he's falling, this, that, the other thing. The head is the principal point of contact. The elbow is out. And whether it was intentful, whether the guy is falling.
Nick, people are like saying to me, he didn't chicken wing him. I said if he chicken winged him, it would be 4 or 5 game suspension.
Yeah,
Right?
and I get it. Like, there's going to use this argument, but there was an elbow to the head. The head was the principal point of contact. And if you want my honest opinion of the play, it looked to me, this is just my perspective, that Kulikov kind of leaned away from the puck. I think it looked like he kind of leaned in a little bit. Now, I might have to take another look. I've only seen it 2 or 3 times. They actually didn't show it on the Jumbotron in the game. I had to actually go on ESPN Plus on my phone and rewind it and see the play again.
Did you see people tweet out to George Richards? They don't show anything on the Jumbotron, and they're like, they don't want to show anything controversial. Well,
you know, we're just sitting there, and, you know, we have no clue what's going on. Like a 5-minute major for an elbow. We're like, what? And if I could just talk on the defense pairs real quick, Kirby. Bjornfoot, again, this is a guy over the weekend, me, you, and Cody, and a couple of others watched some film. And this is a guy who's, and Ryburn even said on our Twitter spaces, he has an excellent hockey IQ. His mold is kind of like he's not as good as this player. I'm quoting Ryburn here. He's not as good as this player, but his mold, his player style is like a Ryan McDonough, Jonas Brodin. And we know how valuable those guys have been. I think Bjornfoot, obviously, he's a first-round pedigree player, so the IQ is going to come with that. One of the things I like is the lack of hesitation. He anticipates the play a lot better than, let's say Mahura does. He makes the quick decision. He is able to process the game a little bit quicker, make that quicker decision, where I think that first-round pedigree comes in. Whereas Mahura, we see him kind of get back there when the puck's dumped in, kind of, you know, eat that puck along the wall, or like kind of just pin him up against the wall, or, you know, he hesitates and, you know, Voracek's able to come in and, you know, create pressure on Mahura. I think having Bjornfoot, again, we don't need anything spectacular. We need somebody that's going to come in, give us, for a 7 defenseman role, that's going to give us 14, 15 minutes, right? Maybe even a little bit more if they're capable. I know how Maurice is with 7th defenseman. He has his 6, and I understand that. But I think we just need a guy who's going to come in and play some minutes, make the simple play, and, you know, not completely be a liability. And I don't think Josh Mahura I'm not a huge fan of Josh Mahura. I don't think he's as bad as he was against Carolina. But this is a guy that, again, Kirby, me and you've said this, I've said this. It's a guy that plays 10, 11, 12 minutes a night. I'm curious.
I noticed that last year.
I'm curious. And I was actually saying to myself, I'm like, why is Maurice only playing him 12, 13, 14 minutes a night? I want to see him some more. And then there was a game where I think he got like 16 and a half, 17. I'm like, oh, maybe that's why he wasn't very inspiring. So, again, I know how Maurice is with that 7th defense. We've seen it last year with Mahura. Like, he has his guys, right? And I don't think Bjornfoot's going to get any more minutes than Mahura. Although everybody that's come in this year has played around, if not more than Mahura in terms of minutes. On the like Mikey Riley earlier in the year, and then Uvis Belinkis has played more. So you take a look at this. I don't know what the plan is for Bjornfoot in terms of minutes, but we just need a guy that's going to come in and make the simple play off the wall, a guy that anticipates the play correctly, smart player, and that's all we're going to need. But I do anticipate that he'll probably be around 12, 13 minutes, although I'd like to see a little bit more, see what we got, because, you know,
I can see more.
You're going to need somebody to carve out a 7th defense role, and, you know, say what you want. I know Mahura played, but that other night, that was unacceptable. Like, if you're going to be playing less than 11 minutes a night, you gotta, like, I get it. You don't play special teams, but in terms of that, you can't be the one giving them 4 power plays. You can't.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and I was surprised to see him in the lineup there, Nick. But we'll talk more about the defensive pairings on episode 6. hopefully by that point, Bjornfoot's going to be in the lineup, you would think, with the Kulikov suspension. But before we close tonight and wrap with Armando here, and he can let us know where everyone can follow him. Obviously, a lot of you already are. So if you're within our community, because me and Armando are always giving each other shout outs on our platforms, be it spaces or podcasts or what have you. But I just wanted to wrap with our team MVP, guys. Really short here, please. Through mid-March, I did a tweet about 5 days ago. I said, I understand what Reinhart, Barkov, and Forsling types have done this season, but to me, the clear team MVP is Sergei Bobrovsky, most consistent player from start of the season to this point. No drop-off or big stretches in his game where he's dropped off or dipped. He's bailed this team out time and again as they lead, or did once upon a time, were leading the NHL standings and are right there at the top. So I don't know who wants to go next, but just give a quick shout out to your team MVP before we wrap here.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. My team MVP, I'm gonna go away from Bob. Give me Samson Reinhart, the guy who's driven our special teams the entire year. Is playing Selke level defense. He's arguably third in the doghouse in that award race, and he's gonna be the first Panther to score 50. This is a guy named, I don't know if you guys heard of him, Pavel Bure. So
Still wear the jersey proudly.
need to update it.
Yeah, we'll see this spring. But yeah, okay, Reinhard, Armando.
I did a little bit of a research project here on this one. In 28 of Bobrovsky's 49 starts, he's given up less than 3 goals, and the Panthers are 24, 4, and 0 when he gives up 2 goals or less. But yeah, people can argue, when Anthony Stolarz is in, they also play well. In this case of Sam Reinhart, when he does score a goal, it's been 38 of 68 games, and it's 28, 7, and 3. That's how I'm doing that criteria, but I get it. Sam Reinhart's a skater. He plays every day versus Bob. He does not. But I just look at the difference in record when he is on his A game closer to that. His GAA is around 2.3, but I'm looking at it as, okay, more often than not, he's giving up 2 goals or less. And it's been a big difference whenever when the Panthers have struggled with scoring. I mean, Sam Reinhart, let's not forget he went 7 straight games at one point without scoring a goal, and I think the Panthers went 6-1-0 in that stretch too.
Mm-hmm.
But also there was that stretch where Sam Reinhart scored 8 straight on special teams too. But I still think it's Sergei Bobrovsky based on the turnaround and what he's been able to do as far as like being so positionally sound, and so many of those, remember that save moments, especially just recently against Matt Duchene, where the Florida Panthers took advantage just shortly after 3 minutes and 29 seconds of scoring 3 straight to get back into it. And honorable mention, Matthew Tkachuk, just what he's done since January 1. But team MVP is Bobrovsky.
So we got 2 Bob votes here. We got a Reinhart. Nick?
I'm going to go against. This is going to be a little controversial. Some people are going to come at me about this, but I know people talk about Bobrovsky and Reinhart and Tkachuk. They've been terrific. Don't get me wrong, but there's a guy who's been feeding Sam Reinhart all year. There's a guy that's been the engine of this team. There's a guy this guy was clear cut through the first 40 or so games of our season when we needed him most, was absolutely the best player on the ice night in and night out. And that's Alexander Barkov. This guy does everything. And people say, oh, doesn't score much or whatever. Sam Reinhart has 47 goals and he's on Alexander Barkov's line. Alexander Barkov is one of our best penalty killers. He's kind of quarterbacks the power play from that half wall, one of our best face-off guys, and we look completely different without Alexander Barkov in the lineup. I think in the most recent stretch where he got hurt, we didn't win a game. That Anaheim, he got hurt in that Anaheim game, and then we played Detroit and New Jersey. Did he play in that New Jersey game?
I'm sure.
I'm not 1,000%, but you know the stretch I'm talking about, right? The New Jersey, Anaheim, that 4-game losing streak where we lost to Detroit in overtime, right? We didn't win a game without him. The kid and the team looked completely different. So again, Alexander Barkov, again, everybody knows, oh, this guy's the MVP, this guy's the MVP. We cannot operate without Alexander Barkov, and I think everybody knows that. And because of that, this guy is the most valuable player to our team. As good as everybody else has been, the most valuable player to our team, who he's had a pretty damn good year too, is Alexander Barkov.
And Nick, yeah, I love the answer. I know some fans will disagree with that. We're the Barkov truthers in our community, Armando. Me, Cody, and Nick, we don't agree on everything, but that's something that we link together on. So that'll be an interesting one for our fans to hear on that front. And again, we talked about the first pairing of Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad struggling last year. So did Alexander Barkov, and he's had a much better regular season, just like Aaron Ekblad and Gustav Forsling has. Thank you, gentlemen, Cody and Nick, for today. Armando, before we go, just a quick plug where people can follow you and what's to come down the pipe here, be it articles, podcasts, what have you.
Yeah, so it's Locked On Panthers. I market it as the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I put a lot of emphasis on Florida because a lot of times when I'm looking up Panthers stats and I don't put Florida in it, it takes me to some NFL team in North Carolina. So that's why I market it as Florida Panthers and put a lot of emphasis on it. But yeah, we're a daily podcast Monday through Friday. We do a lot of we talk about the news of the Florida Panthers, game recaps, preparing for games, sometimes crossover editions of the show with different hosts of the Locked On Network. And yeah, I write for the Hockey News along with David's work. You can catch our work at thehockeynews.com/Florida. Just recently did a 3-4 day stretch of doing all the recaps and previews and for the Panther games when David Dork was on vacation. So great opportunity there. I'm very thankful that he brought me on, and gonna probably maybe write a something in relation to Tobias Bjornfoot coming up in the next few days, or whatever comes as far as the defense performs. So Locked On Panthers anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Thank you so much, Armando. We're going to definitely have you on again through the playoff drive, maybe in the off season here. So appreciate having you on here today on this latest episode of the Cats and Rats podcast. And as always, let's go Panthers.